Going beyond the headlines. Asking the questions you want answered. Exploring government policies and how they impact you. We are delving deeper.
Good evening and welcome to Delving Deeper. I'm your host, Kimberly D'Souza. As the world is adjusting to new economic challenges, we in Trinidad and Tobago are also required to adapt. With me to discuss this issue is the Minister of Trade and Industry, Mrs. Paula Gopee-Scoon. Mrs. Gopee-Scoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. I'm happy to be here.
Now, Minister, I want to jump right in. What has the ministry been doing to strengthen the manufacturing sector and increase non-energy exports?
We've been doing pretty well with our exports. I mean, we've rebounded after COVID. COVID has really done us a bad deal. And in fact, all countries across the world, particularly the region and so on, and smaller countries. And so the focus is on getting our exports back up and our manufacturers. Our manufacturers were not down for too long during the COVID period. Government was sensitive to the fact that that manufacturers need to keep going and to supply the region with the goods that they needed. So now we have actually gone back and there's a rebound to the 2019 figures. I'm very pleased that non-energy exports are now in the vicinity of $15 billion, up 30% from about $10 billion in 2020. So we're doing a lot in manufacturing. And what we started was the Export Booster Initiative. And that Export Booster Initiative is all about export performance, capacity building, institutional strengthening. And within the export performance, we're doing a lot of market analysis. So understanding what those markets outside of the region, which we're used to, what in fact they can produce. What we're doing is amassing market intelligence and bringing that back to the potential exporters so they can understand what's out there in Panama, in Colombia, in the US, in the UK, and looking at all those markets extra regionally, which is where we need to go if we want to boost the exports. And in terms of capacity building, we're doing all that we can to ensure that especially our small and medium-sized exporters can benefit through the Export Booster Initiative, again, in shoring up their businesses, their products, ensuring that we can do product financing, assist with the co-financing in terms of, let's say, exhibiting their goods abroad, ensuring that they have proper packaging and labeling and that kind of thing. So we do a lot to shore up because what we want are more manufacturers, more products, and products that can find niche markets across the globe. And so that's what we're doing in terms of capacity building. And we're not leaving Tobago out of it. There's a special program for Tobago businesses and again, building capacity and ensuring even their indigenous sweets are brought up to standard in terms of their quality and their packaging, and so that it can be exported as well. And then on the institutional side, we've done some change management with Export TT. And the idea is so that we can get our staff rolling again. But there's a wider picture with that, with the capacity building. There's a wider picture where we want to move to, where we are going to move actually to amalgamate Export TT, Invest TT, and Creative TT, where the focus would be not just on manufacturing, and I'll come back to that, but the focus will be on increasing our exports of goods and of services and really internationalizing Trinidad and Tobago, but I'll come back to that. But with the manufacturing, again, to ensure readiness, if we're talking about expanding the manufacturing sector, we need to make sure that we have the technical expertise and that the manufacturers do in fact have the right employees in their business. And sometimes, and especially we've scanned to understand where are the gaps in terms of employment in the manufacturing sector, in terms of the needs of the manufacturers. So we've done 2 exercises so we understand where the gaps are. Based on that, we are about to start an apprenticeship program for young persons 25 years and under, and they are going to enter this program for a 3-year period. They're actually going to be paid $3,000 a month, but they would be learning and understanding electrical technology, mechatronics, maintenance technology, electrical technology, etc. It's a learning exercise. It's an academic exercise in the first year, and then they move on in the second year to spending part of their time actually on the job and then coming back for academic training during the week and so on. And that's a 3-year program. But that's to ensure that manufacturers do have all of the capacity that they need, again, to boost their exports outside of Trinidad and Tobago.
Now, Minister, in terms of specific businesses, those micro and small and medium-sized businesses, what is the ministry doing, or any incentives you're offering to invite them to join the market?
That particular export booster initiative also is for the small and medium and for the micro enterprises. So all of those business enterprises can in fact benefit under that export booster initiative and through Export TT. But apart from that, what a significant problem for small businesses and micro enterprises is access to capital, and government has focused on that. So, for instance, in the ministry, and I'm not talking about the COVID programs that we have existing from the COVID period and which is still going on through the bank and so on, through the banking, commercial banking system. But there are programs within the ministry. I was saying the grant fund facility, for instance, is available to small and medium-sized enterprises so that we provide 50% grant funding to any, and it's not just for manufacturing, it's also for if you can produce services as well, software development, it's agro-processing. So it's a range of small businesses that can, in fact, benefit from that program. As I said, 50%. We put 50, they put 50. And so for the purchase of machinery and equipment, for raw materials, for software development, etc. So that's one program. You asked about micro businesses, so I'm looking across the landscape. And yachting, for instance, is another industry that we want to grow. And we just had approved a $10 million grant facility for small and micro only businesses associated with the yachting industry. Yachting industry is very, very important to Trinidad and Tobago in terms of exporting our services and a wide range of services. But with that, it means that we could get those people back to work in a post-COVID environment. And it also means, again, them getting back up to full capacity. So we're talking about a range of services, whether you are in the upholstery business in the yachting environment, or in the fiberglass welding, or you're doing yachting brokerage services and so on, or you have a restaurant in the yachting area that will service yachties. So that money is available to them. But in addition to that, the Ministry of Trade and Industry is also supporting by ensuring that we market the yachting for Trinidad and Tobago as a destination for yachting. So we're doing quite a bit of that in about 4 international publications to ensure, again, that the world comes to know Trinidad and Tobago as a premier destination for yachting, primarily as we're below the hurricane belt, which is a distinct advantage away, let's say, from Grenada and St. Lucia, which are attractive yachting destinations, but again, which are attractive, which is a most attractive proposition to us. You leave your vessels here for repairs and so on, and you know it's going to be safe during the hurricane season. We are known across the globe for our Trinitario chocolate and, of course, for our varieties of cocoa. And we've been selling these cocoa slabs over the last few decades to Europe and so on. We need to go above that. So what are we doing? We are encouraging our producers to do the value added, to do the end product, which we can then get those products out to market. And you would find, whereas we cannot send our juices to China, we can't compete, we certainly can look at sending our chocolates because, again, it will be made from our fine cocoa. And there are a number of small producers that are doing those doing those items now. There's Love G, which is new. They're now popping up everywhere. And there's Cocoa Bell, and there's forgive me, I think Ashley Paris Ram, Trinidad and Tobago Fine Cocoa as well. Associated Brands have now come up with an organic chocolate. They have been doing commercial chocolates for a long time. They've now come up with an organic chocolate product for export, and they're ones who have already exported into Europe. Marshall Montano, and we've assisted that Montano family to come up with that branded Montano chocolate, and so they now are commercializing their chocolate for exports as well. So again, looking at the right product, expanding our range of products that can be exported, and certainly getting them into markets that are beyond the region. I keep coming back to that. Out of the region, because I think there's some amount of saturation, but still some possibilities in the region, but we have to get out. Another thing that we're doing that I must mention is our enhancing the capabilities of our missions abroad. And by that, I mean we are going to establish commercial offices in particular markets, and in that regard, we're looking at the Guyana market, we're looking at the Jamaica market. If we put a commercial office in Jamaica, that officer, would focus on the markets in the Northern Caribbean and Dominican Republic and Cuba and so on, but also looking at putting commercial offices in the UK, ensuring that we have one in Africa and so on, making sure that our embassies and our missions abroad get involved in economic diplomacy, which is to ensure that we sell our products outside again, and attract investors. But it's about putting in place commercial offices and where possible, commercial officers, even in China as well.
Now, Minister, we are coming out of the pandemic, and so we're looking at the global climate. And I'm just wondering how successful the ministry has been in getting those foreign investments. I mean, what is the future outlook for the Ministry of Trade?
Good. But if you scan the globe, foreign direct investments have been decreasing. And in particular across the Latin American and Caribbean region. Of course, COVID has not helped. In a post-COVID environment, we're getting ready. Investiti has been very, very focused on attracting investors into Trinidad and Tobago. And the focus is not just on international investors, but also on local investors and getting some of that money that is all locked up in our banks back into circulation. And they've been very successful. In fact, I can report that in the 6-month period, that's last quarter 2021, first quarter 2022, we were actually able to attract and operationalize about $600 million in investments across several industries. There are also those that we have locked up, but they have not yet been operationalized, and that will take us up to $1 billion. So, which is quite, I'm only talking about in the non-energy sector, which is quite an improvement to where we were. But I spoke earlier about that trade and investment promotion agency that we hope we will have up and running by the end of December 2022. And the idea, again, is to promote Trinidad and Tobago as that very stellar, ideal location for attracting investments and of course, for exporting goods and services. And again, there will be tremendous focus on the investment side. But Investiti has been able to do well through a number of sectors. And what I'm very proud about is the business process outsourcing industry. I mentioned the figure of $600 million, and I think attached to that would have been about 1,800 jobs executed, and that was executed in the last 6 months. Half of that would have been through the business process outsourcing industry. And what is important, those are call center type operations. Investiti would have been able to attract about 4 of those. What it means is that we would get our young people out to work, and so that those persons that are coming out with a certificate out of the 5 subjects out of secondary schools, it's a good transition for them. Very often you would find that they're not able to find a job to start getting their resume going. It's a good transition for them in that call center operation business. And so we have another 2 in the pipeline, but again, with that new with that new agency coming on board, also together with what is called the special economic zones that we are going to have in place again by the end of 2022, we are going to be able to attract a lot of investment into Trinidad and Tobago and also local investment as well. And I spoke about that special economic zones policy that is now being operationalized by the ministry. I have to go there because that's what's going to get investors into Trinidad and Tobago. And what that will do is it's a suite of investments which are assigned across different sectors and across different locations in Trinidad and Tobago. And it's very attractive and makes us very, very much comparable with many other countries in the world. So I think once that is in place, and we have a very focused investment agency with InvestTT continuing the work that they're doing now, I think we're well poised. Again, together with the attributes of Trinidad and Tobago as being a very attractive place for investment. So there's an existing free zone arrangement, and as you know, and Trinidadians and Tobagonians do in fact know that that Trinidad and Tobago has been blacklisted by the Global Forum and OECD and so on. So that this is one of the things that we had to do to move away from the fact that and to begin to attract investments, etc. again. And so we went to Parliament and we had the special economic zones policy put into legislation through both houses. We're at the point of doing the regulations, which will be all the finite details in terms of compliance. And the board is in place, and then we expect to start then with operationalizing the entire new the new authority, which is going to be called the Special Economic Zone Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. So we are going to be operationalizing that, and once in place, it means that we're going to put out our investment packages, and that investment that investment would be focused on the sectors again: high value manufacturing, agro processing, the maritime industry, including the maritime sector, including the yachting industry as well, and the aviation, and then a number of other industries that we're focusing on, tourism, etc. So those are, again, that's going to give you the financial and non-financial incentives to come to do business in Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, what we have to do is to ensure that we have the spaces, and this is why we are building a very modern and state-of-the-art park, the Phoenix Park Industrial Estate, to accommodate these new investments into Trinidad and Tobago. But of course, that special economic zone policy also allows for probably a Trinidad and the private sector in Trinidad actually developing their own parks across Trinidad and Tobago to attract investments as well. So that responsibility would not lie only with the government in terms of the development of the parks.
Now, Minister, while investors are looking at our country as a really good region to invest in, they may see some of the challenges we face locally. For example, things like crime and, that sort of thing. Any response you can give to that to kind of encourage an investor to still come here and, spend their money and, boost our economy?
Let me tell you something. Crime is everywhere across the globe. Every country has its own challenges. Every country would have come out of its economic challenges in the last 2 years, and that in itself would present existing challenges for countries to cope with. There is a drug trade across the globe, and there would have been strong influences in particular territories. Trinidad and Tobago was known to be a transshipment point, not just Trinidad and Tobago, but the region. And so there are some issues that we have been grappling with and working with our other international partners on dealing with these matters. I think it is well known that Trinidad is also a very friendly location. We have had international investors here in the energy sector for more than 100 years, and they have invested and reinvested, and they keep coming back and see Trinidad as a place that they can in fact exist. And all of their expats have been here. And so despite the fact that we have the challenges of crime, etc., there are things that we have been working on and continue to work on, and we are not unique in this. all across the globe, within the region, within Latin America. When you look at the crime statistics, you would understand there are challenges across the globe that all countries have to confront. We're no different. Trinidad and Tobago remains a good investment landscape, but at the same time, we are a politically stable country. Despite the brouhahas and so on with the opposition, we are a politically stable country. And therefore, I am certain that Trinidad and Tobago will continue to attract investors.
Now, Minister, as we continue on the global front and given what's happening in Ukraine, how is this going to be affecting us locally?
Well, it is affecting us, and it is so unfortunate. And of course, we pray for the people of Ukraine and even the Russians that are involved in this. Many have died and so on. At the end of the day, we are all affected by prices, and that's the end result of it. And we've come through a COVID period where you've had a number of disruptions, supply chain disruptions across the globe. And then with the impasse, the Russia-Ukraine impasse, that has just continued. There's also the freight price increases, which has been substantial. So freight prices have gone up multiple times. And in particular, when you look at the inputs into manufacturing, the concern is for the products that are produced in the region, like in the Ukraine region, in that Eastern European area. The concern is for the inputs like wheat and corn. Ukraine produces about 30% of the world's exports of corn. And you could understand that affects our value chain, our flour value chain. Those are the products that go into, the wheat into flour, into our animal feed. So the price of flour, the price of animal feed, the price of poultry feed have all gone up. And when you look at the forecast, it's not very encouraging. Government has responded very well in terms of removing VAT from a number of products, also removing the common external tariff on the basic food items. We've done that. We've provided the foreign exchange to the importers and also to manufacturers for their inputs into manufacturing to ensure that they can get the basic foods in and their basic inputs into the manufacturing products. So the ministry has provided close to $1 billion US in foreign exchange to ensure that we can do what we can do to get those products on our shelves at a reasonable cost, so that we have been intervening. One will recall that the government has introduced these loan guarantee facilities through the commercial banks that are now very, very attractive in terms of the terms and conditions. The idea is to make sure that all our businesses can survive during this period and grow. So it was not just about COVID. The Ukraine situation really has caused or exacerbated the kinds of issues that businesses and consumers have been dealing with over the last 2 years. The government has responded, and we continue to monitor, looking especially at those very basic items that you have. But the supply chain disruptions have been crucial. And you know that, for instance, there is a problem with baby milk. So it's across the globe, and that's a problem in the US. But of course, all of the baby milk producers are affected, and of course, all of the consumers who buy those products are also affected. So it's been serious.
Now, Minister, I saw that ETEC would have recently issued an expression of interest for an investor or a purchaser for the Magdalena Grande. Can you speak more to this and provide some details?
So yes, Kimberly, it's an expressions of interest. That's what we invited. So in other words, we want firms to come forward, given the parameters outlined in the expressions of interest, which was displayed in the newspaper and so on. It is then to put in there what they wish to do. In other words, what we're looking for is either an international operator or an investor or an outright purchaser. So we're not quite sure what we're going to do as yet, but we want to find what's best for the hotel. At the end of the day, this is a hotel that has been around for quite some time, for decades. And of course, because of where it's located, it is there's significant seat blast. And therefore, it is that the hotel requires renovations and so on. And we need to find an expert international operator who can focus on marketing and getting international folks into Tobago. So It's an expressions of interest. After that process, then we decide, this is Ministry of Finance will look through the proposals, and then we decide on a few candidates. We then do what is an RFP, a request for proposals, and that's when we get more pointed. But this is to give us a wider view, the parameter of what's available out there in terms of doing what we want to do with the hotel, which is to make sure it's internationally branded, get the renovations done as well, and get airlift and get and have international guests coming into Tobago.
Now, Minister, I know one of the things that was in the public domain was the question of the profitability of the hotel, and that may have been the reason why it's now been, going up for sale. Was that an issue that led to that?
It's not going up for sale. We're looking to scan exactly what can be done to get the hotel operational once again. You would have to recognize that we just came out of COVID. Coming out of COVID, it means we kept that hotel going without visitors, paying guests, etc. And now is the time to get it redone again. Tobago has had a bit of a challenge in terms of airlift over the last few years. We want to make sure that we get Tobago rebranded. Not my focus, rather the Minister of Tourism and of course the Tobago tourism entity. But again, it's about getting people into Tobago, attracting tourists to Trinidad and Tobago. But in doing so, you need to have good rooms available. And that's the only way that you can attract the clientele.
Now, Minister, as we're in Tobago, can you provide an update on the Rocky Point project?
So it's all private sector investment and all perhaps about $500 million in investment. So Rocky Point is a significant location and with a lot of archaeological history and so on. Again, we had put on an expressions of interest and then an RFP, got significant interest. I think it must have been about 7 firms or so, and narrowed it down to Superior Hotels, who is now the contractor and investor and also the lessee for that particular property, which is quite attractive in terms of its location and which will bring tremendous benefit to Tobagonians. And it's not just bringing tourists and having tourists spend in terms of foreign exchange and exposing the country, but it's also the economic benefits in terms of Tobagonians being able to supply all of the goods and services as long as it is up to standard, up to the Marriott standard. It's a Marriott branded hotel. And so the trickle-down benefit is going to be tremendous, not just for Tobago, but also for Trinidadians, for Trinidad and Tobago. Understanding, but this really can benefit Tobago in terms of the people and so on. So it's a tremendous project.
Nice. And Minister, as we wrap, any closing thoughts?
I only want the best for the people of Trinidad and Tobago in terms of business. So anytime we talk about business growth and economic prosperity, key in that is the participation of the people of Trinidad and Tobago in that prosperity. And I always come back to the point where families ought to be conversing and talking about what can I do to participate in this economy. When you have your Sunday lunch, you can have a discussion. What small family business can we start? And they can look around and understand that they too can be an integral part of the growth and the benefits of our economy and our economic prosperity.
Mrs. Gopee-Scoon, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of Delving Deeper.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Be sure to join us on this station at the same time next week for another episode of Delving Deeper. I am Kimberly D'Souza, and on behalf of our entire crew, have a good night.